Welcome back to the Monstergarden, and today we're going to be designing the Ratcatcher. It's an old character that I tried to design before, but I didn't finish it, so I'm revisiting the design, and I'm pretty happy with how it turns out. He's supposed to be this strange figure that roams the battlefield, and people rarely see him, but we'll get into more of that later. For now, let's focus on the design process. So, I started off as usual with a list of things that I wanted the design to accomplish. I already had a general idea of what I wanted the Ratcatcher to look like. I wanted him to be covered in ragged cloth and have a hat and gas mask, but I wasn't so sure about his proportions. I wanted him to look imposing and mysterious, but the first few thumbnails that I did really didn't work. I drew him standing straight up, which made him look lanky and awkward, and I felt like it wasn't going anywhere, so I decided to switch to drawing in my sketchbook, and eventually I drew this more hunched posture that works way better. Another thing that I wanted to show off in the design was that he takes mages' corpses from the battlefield. I didn't want this aspect of him to be too on the nose, so no skulls or bones or him literally dragging a corpse behind him. That would be too much. So I did it instead by having him collect thimbles, which are metal fingertips that mages use to cast spells. He hangs them on his arms, so you see them only when he reaches his arms out. He also has this crutch with him that has a hook attached to it that he uses to drag them, but I didn't draw him dragging any one, and the hook is hidden under the cloak, so I decided to separate that into a different drawing just so you can see what the hook looks like. Anyway, next thing was a smoking pipe. I got the inspiration from Meerschaum pipes? Meerschaum pipe? I don't know how to say it, but it's these pipes that I saw, which had really nice designs on them, so I wanted him to have one of those. He would smoke the pipe and then play a flute that he also had on him to cast illusionary spells. I didn't draw him playing the flute in this image, so I drew another rough one just to show how it would look. Though he does not use only one type of magic, he's also proficient in terraforming magic, which he uses his crutch to cast. You can see at the end of his crutch there's this metal bit on it, and through the inside of the crutch itself there runs metal channels that allow it to be used to cast spells. Also, magic has an effect on the body of mages the longer and more often it's used. It's called metamorphosis, and common symptoms are lengthening of limbs and gaining additional fingers, though then there are symptoms that are specific to the type of magic you use. Terraforming magic being one of the most powerful, it is also one of the most destructive on the user's body, causing the skin to flake and fall off the body, creating raw, exposed skin that can have a chance of infection. That's what you can see happening to his hands. Last thing is the boxes and stuff on his back, which are to hold all his equipment and tools. Also, he just likes collecting trinkets, especially fancy boxes. Oh, also, I really like the crows, or ravens, that accompany him. A friend suggested it, and I think it's the final touch that really pulls everything together. Anyway, I think that's basically everything interesting about the design process, so let me tell you a little bit of a story about the Ratcatcher. This particular story is written by a friend of mine on Discord called Broken Doll, and honestly, they did an amazing job on this story. I really like the way it's written, honestly, so I hope you enjoy it as well. The tale is told in mists of halls and shadows of inns, of a stalker in the mud of the fallen on battlefields across the land. Once, he was a simple mage, driven by power and zeal to serve and to conquer those who would resist. He marched ahead, trudging past his allies as their lungs filled with water, sucking its fetid moisture from the dirt as his wide boots still waded through slop and gore. Once they were men to him. Their lives have been of keen interest in barracks and bases, where nightly they would share their stories of heroism and their longing of home. Their bodies ached, their joints creaked, and new inches of bone grew within them daily, as their use of mana took further grip upon them. Commanders before crucial battles would hand out rations of tar to be chewed upon as the need arose, a boost of their power to surmount any task before them. But as cannon fire took his comrades by the platoon, he alone stood upon the battlefield, frozen in fear, as if a standing corpse. The horror of the battlefield that day instilled in him a renewed greed for power. "Commander!" he shouted for his superior, once returning from the battlement. "Commander, I need but a moment of your time. Please, I beg of you." "For your valiance, you have two," the stalwart man replied. "Commander, I must know, from where do we get our tar? It powers us and drives us to our deaths, but in the same pressing jawstroke it may secure victory." "You shall not wish for this knowledge, but to you and you alone I shall give it." The shorter man paused, staring up at the gaunt face of the mage. "It is from the bowels of your own kin, cut from them once they cease to breathe." The young mage looked on in terror. He shook in his boots to his bones, though in the far reaches of his consciousness he raced to know the secrets of its extraction. Years passed as well as soldiers, falling by the horde upon rain-soaked plains, and the young mage was no longer young. Every night, in the dead of it, stretchers rushed from crazed orders to collect the fallen, so that their latent power may not fall into enemy hands. But he knew their power would soon become his own, rationed into tins to be passed out the next day. In the time since he had first learned of the tar's origin, he had been planning his own methods to extract it more purely, and in the coming months he tested each one. After all, nobody missed a single body from the hundreds each day. Some sank into the mud, and some were stolen by robbers in the night, of which he was becoming. His methods improved, from sloppy, jagged cuts and bouts of vomiting from knowing who they were. He carved away until he could cleanly extract the lumps of mana that rested within their prisons. From there he boiled it, fried it, cooked it, and baked it. He crushed and dried it, tempered it with dyes and solutions, and his fellows watched as with the time that passed he grew unfathomable features, none that should belong to a man. His arms grew long and thin, his bones brittle when starved, but strong as iron when fed with tar. He carried a cane with him. A metal hook comprised its handle, which he would use to drag bodies away from the fray, boiling them in tubs of fat to leach away the impurities, so his cuts would be cleaner. The old commander soon passed as his years wore on, not supported as mages were by the mana that coursed through their veins, their teeth stained black by its daily rations. "I knew him," the not young mage said. His face now hung loosely from bone beneath, twisted and warped by his cruel processes. Any who knew him before would no longer call him their friend, but a fiend that cast upon foreign fields with cruel magics. "In my years of service I have seen men torn to shreds, and others built up by the mountains of corpses that lie at their feet." Those who listened felt the weight of the words that fell from his lips. "I myself must attribute my success to those who have fallen around me, and I will never deny it, nor relinquish my purpose. But my purpose is no longer requiring me to see to the wounded or to fell those who would oppose me. Nay, I will ply my craft elsewhere, this vile craft I have made. Within a fortnight he was gone. Whispers in the night and mist told of a stalking creature that roams the darkness after the cannons have fallen asleep. Bodies disappear without a trace. The deliveries of tar find their way to barracks on both sides for a price. Should you find yourself in the horror of battle, you should watch from every side, for the mud hides more than it shows. Shells covering men wearing scavenged pieces from those that died too close. If you fall, you may never be found. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I did making it. That's all for today, and I hope to see you again soon. Take care.